use the blackboard.
Okay.
That's yours.
Well, I would say 2 terms, and I agree with Mark, and I know he says 3 terms, but 2 terms, and the low vote getters, as I mentioned before, would be able to run again, of course, but only for the 4 years.
So 8 and 10.
2 terms, 2 terms,
8 and 10.
no, actually be 8 and 6.
8 and 6. So you're going to let the 2-year term people run for re-election one time.
If they will,
And then they would become lame ducks immediately upon re-election.
you don't listen, you don't agree with that.
For a large number of lame duck people. Okay, Mr. Cunningham.
Can I ask for John Andizio's vote? Was it sounded good at the time?
John voted for 3 terms.
For the 4-year term.
But he wanted the 2-year people to only be able to serve 10 years.
That's where I am.
So 14 and 10.
12 and 10.
12 and
Well, that's what I had. You didn't change it to 14.
10. No, that was Whammer that said that.
Well, okay, so Clark, you want 3 terms.
3 terms.
What I'm saying,
And
3-term limit,
12 and 10.
everything starts the minute you get elected.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I agree with that.
First term happens to be a shorter one.
No, I agree with
You would create
Jack.
a disincentive for people who run for 2 years.
Still have us.
Of course, keep saying they're not going to run for 2-year term. Everybody's going to run and see what they get. Mr. Wyman.
I agree with Frank, John, Rick, same thing, 3 4-year term, starts immediately, and for 2 years, 10 years, immediately.
You said that.
You got that right.
Thank you, Mr. Wyman. Mr. Higgins.
3 terms with the 2 years going to 14 years.
So you want the 14, 10.
So we have 3 people for that.
Yeah, we have,
So I have to vote up.
okay, we have,
Did anyone vote for
6.
2-year term? Kit voted for 2-year terms?
I voted for 2 and so did Rick.
Jack.
And so did Jack.
Oh, Jack, I'm sorry, John.
And so did Kick.
2, 3. Okay, so here's how I have it. 3 people voted to have the 12 and 10. Those would be Mr. Andizio, Mr. Cunningham, and Mr. Wyman.
Right.
3 voted for the 12 and 10. The 12 and 14, it was 3 people voted for that. That was Mr. Ruffley, myself, and Mr. Nemec. So that's 6. There's 4 other ones. We had 2 8 and 10s. That would be Jack and Charmaine. We had an 8 and a...
And Rick.
I'm sorry, Mr. Morelli. Okay, that's my odd one.
What were you in Veronica again?
We were
I have you down for
12 and 14.
I have you down for 12, 10.
12 and 14. There's only one 12, 10. That's Mr. Andizio. So there's 3 12. There's 3. There's 3 12 10s. 3 12 10s, 3 12 14s, 3 8 10s, and an 8 6. Mr. Heffer, you're down man out. And we don't know what Mr. Kersey will say because he's against term limits as a general principle. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to think about this and revisit this next week. All right. And we have fairly even split on this.
But it's fair to say, at least in the direction that we're in favor of some type of term limits.
Yeah, except
At
for
least
CJ.
10 people there.
Yeah, except for CJ.
If I may, believe me, I don't see many people wanting to have many terms.
No. I agree with John 100%. No.
Believe me.
No.
All right. Okay. Let's go.
It's not like they're going to make $80,000 a year or something.
All right. Let's go then to the next issue. This is Mr. Heffern's issue. And this is I had presumed, not thinking that there was an alternative, that candidates for council in the initial election would declare whether they were running for a 4-year seat or a 2-year seat. Mr. Heffern has suggested that the seats be apportioned based on vote total, and that the lowest vote total, the bottom half in vote total would get the 2-year terms. I had not considered that. I'm not in agreement with that, but I'm wondering what the discussion, if people like to discuss that. Mr. Neiman?
I agree. I don't agree that it should be, I think that it should be based on performance, not how well they did 2 years prior. So I don't agree. I think it should be not based on that system. I think it should be.
People should declare
Right.
at the initial election whether they're running
Yes.
for a 4-year term or 2 years.
Correct.
Mr. Cunningham?
But isn't he talking about the initial election only?
Correct.
So it wouldn't be under, when you meant performance, do you mean performance of how many votes?
Well,
you got?
he's saying that 2 years later, who has to rerun is based on the 2 years prior.
Just the first election will determine who's serving a 2-year term. Everybody after that will get 4-year terms. So Dick says, like, we'll be an 11-person council, the bottom 5 would serve a 2-year term. Mr. Nemick's saying you should declare it to be, and I sharing my point, which is people should be allowed to declare for which term they would run for, so they can plan their lives, and like, you know, I could serve a 2-year term, but I can't serve a 4-year term, and things of that sort. I'm sorry, Mr. Cross.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to emphasize the transitional nature of the 2-year term. You will have to make provisions for the sitting county commissioners. So
Their terms will be expired.
not the first election they won't.
Yes, they will. Their terms will be expired.
10 and 14 they go through.
No, they serve till the end of 2000, the election is 2011.
Election is 2011.
Right.
So you've got an overlapping term of,
Their terms would expire at the conclusion of 2011.
Right.
And our council would
Okay.
come into office in 2012.
my math, I have my math faulty here. I have us coming in 2011, serving 2012, and then, yeah, because it was 2009 to begin the odd year. My apologies.
Right, 2011, rather than it being a county commissioner election, it would be a county council election.
Jim,
Please.
I agree with you. I think that people should choose whether they're going for 2 or 4. That's usually the way we see it with everything out there. It's their right. I just don't agree with the fact that based on votes. You know, let them choose. It's their choice. If they don't feel they want to run for 2, they don't have to. I think that's the best way of handling it the fairest way.
Mr. Schumacher?
I agree with Chick. I think should be a 6 and 5. If there's 11 members, it should be a 6-5 split. 11 people will serve a 2-year term. I think it's a democratic way.
Right, but Jackie, the point that everybody would just run for council and the bottom 5 would serve a 2-year term.
Yes.
Kick saying that
Yes.
based on vote totals
Yes.
and not by declaration of which seat you're running for.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Cunningham?
I'm going to agree with Rick and you and disagree with Jack and Kay on this one. I think you're right. People really want to plan their lives. I may run, somebody may decide to run for 2 with the idea that they're going to do a 2 and a 4. That's, I think they need to declare what they're running for.
Yeah, I do too.
There are some questions I would have for PDL on how that would work. How many candidates, would you have enough candidates necessarily to fill both of those spots? Everybody would run for 2, but I'm saying you declare what you're running for.
Mr. Adams?
It's a good formula. However, how many people are going to get to run for that 2 years? You know what I'm saying?
Okay. It's a one-time deal.
I think lots of people run for 2 years. Mr. Cross?
Remember, the 2-year term is a transitional term. You're adopting the administrative code, you're adopting the nuts and bolts and framework of the succeeding government. So you conceivably could have the most impact and the most influence or damage in a 2-year term, because you are doing all the necessary building, you are doing all the administrative code, you are establishing all the precedents for hiring, you are doing it. You may find a 2-year term is a very convenient way to get in, do your dirty work, and get out.
Jim.
If you're allowed to call.
I just can't believe that you would have a chance to run for a 4-year term, that you would travel this whole county and spending the money that you'll spend to get elected. I don't see why you would want a 2-year term over a 4-year term. I think John is right. I don't think you're going to get many people looking for a 2-year term.
Mr. Newman, before we come to you, can I ask Mr. Cross, I'm in a home rule government with our own charter, which is interesting. Are there townships that have 4-year and 2-year terms for supervisors?
a 6-year term for second-class townships without a home rule. And when you have a home rule, you could have 3 years, three commissioners, 4 years.
Are there townships that have different lengths of terms?
I don't know that.
If I could.
You mean 2 different lengths of terms for the city board?
Yes.
A board of 5 would have 3 and 2?